Hello, everybody. My name is Cody Rattler, and today we are going to be filling out the ultimate favorite Pokemon picker generator table thing online. If you're watching this, I'll make sure to drop a link down below wherever you're watching it, but this table is basically a glorified tracker that will help you boil down what is your favorite Pokemon. Considering, again, we have over 1,000. I thought this would be fun to do. We've hopped on Twitch, so if you guys are here now, I appreciate you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, give the video a like, subscribe, you guys know the deal. Comment your favorite down below if you want. But without further ado, we are going to dive in. I'm going to start with Gen 1, and I don't know how fast or slow I'm going to be at this. I've heard some people say they flew through it. I've heard others say it took them forever, or they couldn't even figure out the final decision. So we're gonna see where the road takes us today. But as always, thank you guys for joining. Let's start off with Gen 1. We're just going to go from left to right and start filling this thing out. I guess before I do dive in, I want to say a couple quick rules. These are rules that I'm more or less implementing on myself. I would like to avoid picking any double Pokemon if possible, unless I'm really set on that Pokemon or there happens to be no other options. I want to see if we can avoid it being repeats. I might have to come back and revisit some squares, but we'll see where it goes. First and foremost, Gen 1, normal type. As you can see, when you click into any of the squares, you're going to get all the options for any of the square that you picked in. So here's all of our Gen 1s. We have the Pidgey line, we've got Rattata, we've got Spearow, we've got Jiggly, Meowth, Farfetch, the Dodrio, Lickitung, Chansey, Kangaskhan, Tauros, Ditto, Eevee, Porygon, and Snorlax. All right, so already I'm struggling. First square. I think if I were to just follow my heart, it's probably Snorlax out of this group. Although I really do like Kangaskhan, particularly the Mega. However, we do have fields for Mega, so I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. If I'm thinking who is just normal, not even like dual types, it's probably gonna be Snorlax. And my dude Snorlax really isn't going to show up in any other square. I feel like I have to give Snorlax the love. It's a Gen 1 normal. It's not going to be in any other square. At least I don't think it will be. Snorlax for sure. Aaron agrees. I feel like Snorlax is the given there. Out of those options, we're going with Snorlax. All right, first one done. Easy. Next, we've got Fire. So I was wondering how this would be, but we do have the starters in here. There is a box at the end of these rows that is meant for starters, so now I'm a little torn. Are any of the starters going to take one of the normal, or just the typing squares for me? Looking at Gen 1 Fires, we have Charizard line, we have Ninetales, Growlithe, Ponyta, Magmar by himself, Flareon, and Moltres. Oh, I do love Moltres, but we also have a Legendary. Shit. I don't know. The most normal Pokemon ever, Snorlax. You would have hit Kangaskhan, Josh. 10 out of 10 would be normal again. The Zard. Yeah, see, I got a feeling that out of all the fire Pokemon, I'll say this. If I'm going to start, Fire Red version and I'm going to just play a new game, out of all the fire Pokemon that I have at my disposal, it's probably going to be Charizard. Like, not only is it's my favorite starter for Kanto. I'm just going to go ahead and skip to it. We're going to say it. Charizard's my favorite starter. It's my favorite fire type. Full disclosure, I have a lot of opinions as far as battle aspects too, so I think about who's most viable. Out of all the Eevees, I gotta say Flareon's my least favorite. So if anybody out there is a Flareon stan, I'm sorry. I'm not in that boat with you. Battle-wise, I think Flareon has the worst stats, but I'm going to go Charizard. I think we're going to go Charizard. Why'd my music stop? I do like Moltres, but it's not my favorite fire type. At least Gen 1, I'm going to go with the Charizard. Water. Holy cow. Okay. I was wondering at what point were we going to have a lot of options. There are a handful of Gen 1 water types. Also, I'm probably not going to go through and read all these with every square because at some point you guys are going to find out, probably sooner than later, that I don't remember everybody's names. In fact, that's actually something I thought of as a side tangent. I thought of how cool it would be to try to see how far I could get through naming all of them if I just looked at flashcards and see like to what generation I make it before I fail. Maybe we'll try that. But anyway, let's take a look at the water types. So we've got a lot. So I don't really want to stick to doing the water, the starters. Or I love the starters, and they might arguably be some of the strongest in their category types, but I don't know. I love Blastoise, one of my favorites. I'm not a really big Psyduck, Golduck fan, I'm sorry. When it comes to battling, I don't think they've ever seen the time of day on my teams. I do like Poliwrath. Pretty cool that it's water and fighting. Tentacruel, not my favorite. Slowbro, though. Slowbro is he's a bro. He's a tank. Dugong's pretty cool. Cloyster, defensive tank. Kingler, I wish Kingler was a little bit better. It's cool. It's just not all that viable. Seadra. Now, if it was Kingdra, we'd be a little bit different. Since it's only Gen 1, we're going to keep going. Seaking. Starmie. Starmie's sick. I love that Misty had Starmie. It was like her signature until, you know, Togepi. But Gyarados, also a really good choice. Dang, we have Lapras too. Vaporeon, and then the fossils. Ugh. Okay, so this is hard. I think I'm going to have to boil this down between Slowbro, Gyarados. Shit, maybe Vaporeon. I do like Lapras a lot, but I don't know if it trumps those are the ones I just named. I'm thinking specifically battles. Like, that's where my brain's going to be at, is battle. Who would I take into battles, and who are my favorite Pokemon to use? By default, that's where my favorites seem to be. So it's either going to be within Slowbro, a Gyarados, or Vaporeon. I'm going to say no on Vaporeon because I feel like we might have another point for Vaporeon to pop up. I know it's Gen 1, but it's also within the Eevee line, so we might have another box to revisit for Vaporeon, and I don't want to have doubles at any point. However, Slowbro and Gyarados, I think that they may only be showing up in these two. We also have Psychic and Flying that they'll probably show up in as well, but I don't see those as Psychic and Flying Pokemon. I see them as Water mostly. Obviously, they have their dual typings. Who would I rather have, though? Would I rather have the Slowbro, or would I rather have Gyarados? I think for battle's sake, it'd probably be Gyarados. I love that Moxidose. You guys know. Josh knows. The Dragon Rage Moxidose. I think it's going to be Gyarados. Slowbro is beefy as hell. In fact, my Slowbro that I had in online was called Beefcakes. That's how beefy I made it. We're going Gyarados. Gyarados got to be the best. IMO. Aaron, I wanted to read what you guys are saying. Most of them are badass. Poliwrath for me, nice. Water is my favorite type, but goddamn Gen 1 is solid. You're right about that. Now I'm interested to see what's in grass. I feel like this is going to be less, but let's take a look. It is less, but we've got a small handful within here. All right, so again, I'm biased. I love the starters. I love Venusaur. But if I could just like not focus on them since I've already picked Charizard. Vileplume, pretty cool. We used Mommy in the Fire Red Nuzlocke that I ultimately made it up to Lance and then lost. I got stomped right before the final showdown with Chad. Parasect, not one of my favorites, although considering Last of Us is hyped right now, I do want to call out that Parasect is probably getting a little bit more into love with the fungal infection that it is. I don't know about Victory Bell. If I had to choose between these two, I probably would not pick Victory Bell. I would probably pick Vileplume. Executor is cool though. He's also psychic, so I don't know. It's like a psychic grass. I'm not even gonna give Tangela the time of day. I don't know how many Tangela stands we have out there, but it ain't me. All right, if I have to pick, which I have to because that's what we're doing, I'm gonna go Vileplume. Again, I really, really do like Venusaur, and Venusaur it might even trump Vileplume for me, but I'm trying to avoid too much love on the starters. I do love Venusaur. I want to be very clear. If I were to build a new team in Fire Red and I were to go, Venusaur, I wouldn't need to look any further for grass. Most of the time I'm picking Charizard, so I'd pick something like Vileplume instead. Let's go Vileplume, only because I'm not trying to be too biased with starters. What would you guys say? Anybody have any preferences on their Gen 1 grass out of those? I'm going to move over to Electric. Gen 1 Electric. All right, we got a pretty small field from here. I already know. I saw this list and I already know. Do we have any immediate guesses? You like Gloom more than Vileplume, huh? I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to lean towards Final Evolutions in all of my choices. But looking at these, I can already guarantee you my favorite here is Jolteon. I love Zapdos. And again, I love my Legendaries. I think out of all three of those Legendary birds, Zapdos is my favorite. But Jolteon, if I'm going to play Fire Red, and that's what the question I keep coming back to, Jolteon is my Electric, hands down. I'm pretty sure it's the fastest. You guys can quote me on that. And it is one of the hardest special attackers in the Gen 1 era. So I don't remember anything outspeeding my Jolteon. Just in general, anytime I'm playing Fire Red, Jolteon's the way to go. I want to say there's some good choices in here. Not looking at you, Voltorb, but Jolteon. I'm going to pose the same question each time in chat. Let me know what you guys' Gen 1 Electric would be. Next up, Ice. So Ice is few and far between for Gen 1. There's only a small handful. We have Dewgong, we have Cloyster. You notice neither of which is the first form, too? Those first forms are only water. They pick up Ice in the second form. We have Jinx, we have Lapras, and then we have Articuno. I mean, looking at these, am I base to pick Articuno? Like, is it a bad thing to lean Articuno? I really do like Lapras. Jinx is Jinx is something else. These two I probably wouldn't be taking throughout a normal game if I didn't. They're not my favorites. I could use them. Cloyster's really good defensive-wise, but if we're talking ice Pokemon, like who's going to be the most viable? I like that we've got water as a pairing and flying as a pairing. I don't know, though. It might be Articuno. I do love Lapras, but if I'm boiling it back down between these two, I think we're going to go Articuno. Again, if I'm thinking of just Gen 1 and I have to pick up an ice type on my team, who would I want? It's probably going to be Articuno. Shout out to Farticuno for helping out as much as it could through the Pokemon randomizer Nuzlocke. Which one would you guys pick for your Gen 1 Ice? You only have a few options here, but let's move along. Gen 1 Fighting. So Fighting is some of my favorite type. I really like Fighting. Looking at these, though, I feel my answer is pretty based. I'm already catering towards one. I feel like there's a small handful in here that I really do like. Namely, I really like Poliwrath. It's cool. Water and Fighting is a neat combo. I don't feel like Poliwrath gets as much love. I didn't play too much Poliwrath growing up. Like, Poliwrath wasn't on a whole lot of my teams in rotation. But I really do like Poliwrath. I also really like Hitmonchan. The ability to, like, use the different types of punches was always really cool. You could have Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch. Of course, Mach and other things. Hitmonchan is really cool. Not really the biggest fan. If you were to compare these two, I lean towards Chan, but come on. Come on. If anybody's going to win this Gen 1 Fighting, there is no other competitor. It's the champ. It's the Machamp. The champ. Come on. Articuno, nice. Good choice on that one, Trivium. I'm going to go ahead and say you're agreeing with me on the Machamp here. Am I right? Am I right or am I right? Machamp takes the cake. There's no way around it. Machamp is the hardest hitting fighting type. Of course, it's the hardest to get. You needed to be able to link trade or cable trade. I can't even say what I'm trying to say. You needed a trade to make it happen. And in Gen 1, that was a lot harder to do back in the day. Nowadays, not so much. But yeah, Machamp. The champ. All right, let's move on to Poison type. Holy crap. Oh my god. Is that more than the water? That might be the same amount. Well, there's one more, I think. There's one more in Poison. Holy cow. We have a lot of Poison type to pick from. God damn. All right, so again, my eyes immediately go towards Venusaur. I love Venusaur. Such a well-rounded Pokemon in the game. You can't really go wrong with your starter Pokemon. Although, let's keep moving. Let's keep taking a look. The bug line's not really my favorite. Beedrill, Not the most viable. That thing just destroyed by rock types. Often one hit by fire. Beedrill does not pose much of a threat. Although I do want to call out that Beedrill did see some love in the TikTok post. A few people were saying Beedrill gang, which is surprising. Maybe the Mega gave it a little bit more spotlight. We've got Arbok, who is, I say Arbok. Jesse's Pokemon. Got some love from the show. It's not going to get any love from me, though. I don't like Arbok, if I'm being honest. Not my poison type of choice. However, when we get into these next few, Nidoking, I'm going to jump ahead and say that Nidoking might win this tier for me. Ground and poison, and Nidoking is a freaking beast. R.I.P. Quandale. Lost but not forgotten. Oh, we also have Zubat. I forgot. Zubat's poison. So, Zubat and Golbat, not my favorites, but Crobat, ooh, chef's kiss. I love Crobat, although Crobat's not on this list, so we're going to keep going. Once again, the Vileplume. We've already got Vileplume for my grass, so we're skipping. Venomoth, I'm not feeling it. Another chance for Victory Bell, not happening. Another chance for Tentacruel, probably not happening. Muck, pretty cool, but in the long run, not the best. Gengar, so I'm biased. Gengar is going to be one of my favorite Gen 1. I'm spoiling it for you guys. Gengar is probably in my top 3. However, Gengar is also the only ghost line, so Gengar is exempt from poison. We're not even considering Gengar for the poison category. I really do like Weezing, though. Weezing has made my team a couple of times, more specifically for online battles. I've done my best to try to make Weezing viable. It doesn't hold up the most, but I do like Weezing. However, out of all of these, we're circling back. There's nothing that beats the king. Nidoking, all the way. There's no better poison types. You can't change my mind. Gen 1, you're not changing my mind. All right, ground type. Once again, Nidoking, moving on. Just kidding. We're not doing that. We can't double up. I love Nidoking, but we can't. All right, smaller for the ground types. So we have Sandshrew. We have the king and the queen. We have Dugtrio. Golem line. We have Onix, Cubone, and Marowak. So I forget that they're ground. I guess that they are. Yeah, they're only ground type. And then we have Rhyhorn and Rhydon, which are also both rock. But ground type specifically. Who's my favorite out of this line for ground? You know, if we didn't just go through poison, I would probably pick Nidoking for this, but we can't double up. We can't double up there. So honestly, when I think about who helped the most in Gen 1, like throughout my experience, and I've played red, blue, and yellow plenty of times, multiple times. Might be the most generation I've played just consecutively. I've been a fan since Gen 1. I've played Gen 1 probably the most over and over throughout the years. And when I think about which ground type have I used the most, again, excluding Nidoking here, I'm probably going to say Dugtrio. Now, Dugtrio didn't always stick to my team, but when it came to, like, especially my early years, needing to get through Lieutenant Surge, I always want to say LT, to get through Lieutenant Surge, Dugtrio was clutch. It was that first ground type that you could really get a hold of. And I gotta say, like, Dugtrio, like, always cleared. Always. I don't know, this is tough. I do like those third forms that, you know, trade to evolve, but Golem was just not my favorite. And the rest, I don't know, the rest just don't make the cut. LT Surge, Lieutenant. As always, let me know in the comments if you guys have any preferences on the ground. Who would you pick in this one? Moving back over to flying. I like that Charizard's the first one. My eyes immediately go over to Charizard. So we have Butterfree. You guys do know that I like Butterfree. Butterfree can't really take hits really well in the game, but it's got some decent speed. And when they introduced Quiver Dance, it made it way better. I love that Sleep Powder. I love, you know, the Psychic it can hit with. But looking at our other options, Pidgeot used to be one of my favorites when I first started playing the game. I feel like I always picked up the Pidgey line. But it is normal and flying, which is interesting. Fearow, though, if I were to pick between those two, I think Fearow takes the cake for me. And I only say that because I believe the stats are higher. I would go Fearow over those. Back to the Golbat and Zubat. I love these two. But between these two, Dodrio or Fearow, I'd probably go Dodrio. Shit, we have Scyther though. Oh, and Aerodactyl. Okay, we haven't got to Rock though, so maybe Aerodactyl will be under the Rock. And then I also have the legendary birds, which I don't know. Obviously, flying is going to be their second type on all of the above, but I don't see them as flying. I see them as, you know, their individual types. If I were to look at this list as just flying, who do I like the most out of flying? It's probably going to be Dodrio. Which is ironic because I don't even know if Dodrio actually learns fly. It might. But for the sake of speed and drill peck, like the speed and the attack stat, amazing. Especially when you're just playing the vanilla game, like Dodrio can clear. Dodrio's taking the cake for my flying type. Again, we're excluding things we chose before, so we're not considering Charizard. We're not considering Gyarados or Articuno. Not that I would for the flying on those two, but I don't want any doubles if we can avoid it. Who would you guys pick out of this group for flying? Moving over to Psychic. Okay, Psychic had more than I thought it was going to. Ghost has nothing, but let's see what Psychic has. So, I think it goes without saying, right? Do you guys know what I'm going to say? I guess it wouldn't go without saying if that was the case. Or it would? I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to get my mic to lock where I want it to stay. Looking at this list, I love Alakazam. If I could have Alakazam on my like Gen 1 team, I absolutely would. But I did not see my boy Mewtwo down there. However, I do want to call out that Mewtwo is my favorite legendary from Gen 1. You just can't beat the best. Like, it is the best. Although Mew is also in there, and the only reason I wouldn't pick Mew over Mewtwo is because Mew was like much harder to get as a kid. I'm pretty sure you had to do like some random ass glitches that I didn't even know about really. Like, to be honest, I never really had access to Mew. Later on, I got Mew through like cheats and stuff, but I never played Mew like through a game. Not to say you play a game with Mewtwo, you usually get Mewtwo at the end, but I was so much more connected to Mewtwo because it was always something that you actually got and you really did strive for. It was the big bad. I'm going to save Mewtwo for the legendaries though, because I fucking love Mewtwo. I'm also going to exclude Mew here only because Mew wasn't an option that like I said, I typically got throughout the game. Looking at these though, if you weren't looking at these two at the end, I probably will cater towards Alakazam. I don't think there's a better glass cannon in the game as far as like fast and nice and heavy hitting. Alakazam takes the Psychic for me. Again, I gave my reasonings why I would exclude these two. I think they're overpowered, and obviously if you're going to pick these, that's fair, but I want to make sure not to not to go too heavy on them when I do have a legendary category coming up. Moving into the bug category. All right, so we've got our Category line, we've got the Weedle line, Paras, we have Venonat, Venomoth, we have Scyther, and Pinsir. So I think it goes without saying, for me, it's going to be Scyther. Pinsir is pretty freaking cool, but it's not Scyther, right? Also, I want to call out that Scyther got a lot of love in that TikTok post. There was a lot of Scyther gang coming out swinging. I mean, you don't get much cooler than a praying mantis with freaking blades for arms. Come on. Scyther? Are you kidding me? To this day, one of the coolest designs. Scyther, taking the bug cake. Taking the bug cake. Let me know if you guys have any favorites than that. I'm going to move on to Rock, which I think my choice is already made for me. I knew as I was pulling this up, it's going to be Aerodactyl. I love Aerodactyl. We didn't get to use Aerodactyl in that Fire Red Nuzlocke because when you bring it back to life from the fossil, it's level 5. Ain't nobody got time for that. I couldn't level up a level 5 to, what were we at, like 40s or 50s at the time? Gotta love that level 5, exactly. See, Trivium knows. Okay, aside from the level 5 though, if your Aerodactyl could have been like up to par, this thing is fast and hits hard as well. It's a flying rock type, so it's pretty good. Like in Gen 1 alone, Aerodactyl definitely holds up. If you can bring it up past that level 5. We had some odds stacked up against us, but no hate against these. I think if I were to pick between these two fossils, I'd be leaning Kabutops. We're going to go with Aerodactyl. All right, ghost type, it's a given. Gengar. I love these two, but they're not tattooed on me, so Gengar. In fact, the only two Pokemon that I have tattooed are Gengar and Nidorino. It's the original battle. The first battle that any of us got to see. Gengar all the way. Let me pause real quick. I want to read this comment, Deadpool. I was just playing the Zelda Oracle of Ages on an emulator. I thought I save stat where I was in the second dungeon, but it turns out I hadn't. And when I looked at the save stat, I was all the way back at the first dungeon. That's the worst about emulators is you can easily close it without realizing that you forgot to save it the right way. Or even if you think you saved it the right way, there's probably some other way that you could have saved it. Yeah, it sucks. Sometimes it's awful. Knock on wood, I've yet to like run into that issue on anything I've streamed. We didn't lose any progress on that Fire Red Nuzlocke that I did. But can you imagine if I would have ran into something like Deadpool was talking about where I like lose a whole stream's worth of progress? That would have been devastating. All right, the only dragon option that we have in Gen 1. I don't know if you guys have preferences between. I love all three, but nobody's taking the cake over Dragonite. These two are amazing. I kind of wish Dragonite kept that same blue. Wouldn't that have been cool? I mean, Dragonite is really cool. The colors are awesome, but these two go from like majestic dragon blue to this just yellow and green combo. Dark type. So this is something that I think is interesting, and I don't know how I feel about this right now because a lot of these types didn't exist for Gen 1. Now they do. And if you look at this category, what the hell am I supposed to pick? There is no Gen 1 Dark type. We have Missing No. We have the ghost that Cubone's mother Marowak, the deceased Pokemon, appeared as before you use the Slipco. We have the fossil of Aerodactyl and Kabutops, and then we have just some broken code. I don't even know what that is. That's Missing No. What the hell is that? What do I pick for a Dark type? Who's my favorite Gen 1 Dark type? What the fuck are those exactly? I don't know. If I had to pick these, I'd pick Missing No because when we had the original red and blue, I used the hell out of that cheat. Did anybody else here use that Cinnabar Island cheat? You run up to the dude in Viridian, you have him show you how to battle with this little Weedle or capture it or whatever, run down to Cinnabar, do a little surfing next to the gym, and then bam, Missing No. And suddenly the 6th item in your slots multiplied to infinity. Pepperidge Farms remembers back in the day. I was there many, many moons ago. All right, so this is another thing. Steel did not exist for Gen 1. In hindsight, now it does. Like, if you were to go and play even Fire Red. Fire Red does have Steel. It doesn't have Fairy because that wasn't around by then, but if they ever make another Kanto version of the game, it will include anything up until today's date. So we will see fairies in Kanto if they ever do a Kanto again. I'm not saying that they need to. We already have the originals. We have Fire Red as a remake. We have the freaking Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. Like, we have a lot of Kanto already. But my point on these being they didn't exist. So my mindset isn't like, yeah, there's Steel in Gen 1. Because there wasn't in Gen 1. Specifically just Gen 1. Out of these two, it's a given. I'm going to pick Magneton. I thought Clefairy and Clefable were fairy types. See, the thing is, they are now, but fairy didn't exist in Gen 1. That's what I'm saying. And red and blue, they're just normal type. They weren't fairy. Nowadays, here we go. Here's our current fairy types. Between these 5 Pokemon, I don't know. These two are kind of like beefy. Like, they're really not heavy hitters, but they are some tanks in their own right. They're not the most viable as far as online battling goes, but Mr. Mime, he's kind of a little asshole. Mr. Mime can definitely be used in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. When I'm looking at these, I don't want to give love to Mr. Mime, but I think I'm going to pick Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime! Creepy as hell. This Pokemon is something else, but I think it's going to take my fairy types. How the hell did this thing become a fairy type? Who looked at this thing and saw fairy? I mean, it is kind of like, I don't know. It's in the realm. What a Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon Let's Go has fairy. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, the original Gen 1 doesn't. The hardest choice, the favorite starter. So I think I had already said this, but out of the original starters, it's going to be Charizard. Which I know I just said I didn't want repeats. If I had to pick fire, it was also going to be Charizard. So here I am breaking my own rule. I think Charizard's taking the cake on this. I love Blastoise, and Venusaur deserves love too. If we have any Venusaur stands, I get it. I get it. But I definitely lean between these two. And if I look back at how many times I've played Generation 1, I've always catered Charizard. I've had to tell myself not to pick Charizard in the past. That's why the other two got my love, but it's going to be Charizard. I think it has to be. Pikachu and Eevee, no. You guys, you're not going to get my favorite starter. All right, so these are our Gigamax or Gigantamax forms, but also are these Dynamax? Oh, these are also Megas. I'm sorry, not Dynamax. Dynamax is just big regular forms. These are Gigantamax forms, which are varied from just bigger Dynamax. But then there's also the Megas. I kind of wish the Megas and the Gigantamax are separate, because I genuinely like Megas. I love Megas so much more than the damn Gigantamax thing. So we're probably going to stick to the Megas, but let's kind of go through these. So these first handful that we have are Megas, all the way up until this Mewtwo. Where the Venusaur starts, either the Gigantamax that were in Sword and Shield. So these are like the rare forms that certain Pokemon had. Look at this Snorlax with like a Garden of Eden on its stomach. No, I'm going to just stick to the Megas. I prefer the Megas. And out of all of them, if I had to pick who was my favorite, I think it's Mewtwo Y. I think Mewtwo Y took the cake. I used it the most when I was battling online, and it hits so hard. Although there were a couple of favorites that I had within this group that I feel are worthy of calling out. I love Charizard Y. It's this version. This is Charizard X. This kept flying in fire. I love the Blastoise. I love that Kangaskhan. And I love the Gyarados. All of those I use in battling online. But Mewtwo was my favorite. Mewtwo Y specifically. The X form had fighting type, but this one just hit like a truck. Like, hits even harder than regular Mewtwo. Better. So now I'll just take a step back and show you guys on screen. From this Venusaur up until... Let me get my mouse on screen. From this Venusaur up until this Mewtwo, those are our Megas. From this Venusaur up until the Snorlax, those are the Gigantamax forms. Again, I kind of wish that they were in separate categories, because I would pick differently, but I'm going to go for the Mewtwo Y. So this is the legendary form, or the legendary category. We have our 3 legendary birds, which I love all 3 of these birds. Special place in my heart. They're the original 3 legendaries. We also have Mewtwo and Mew. Again, Mew's great. Probably the coolest out of all of these, but I didn't have Mew. Like, it's hard to get a hold of Mew in the normal game. You have to figure out how to be glitching or cheating or something. Or nowadays you just get it through special event. But if I excluded Mew for that reason and only looked at these, it would be Mewtwo. Mewtwo was my favorite. It made it onto my team every time I played Red or Blue. Mewtwo is the OG. I love Mewtwo. My favorite legendary, particularly in Gen 1. Now we need to decide, out of all the Pokemon that we picked for our typing or every column category on Gen 1, who is my favorite Gen 1 Pokemon? This last row is our favorite row. So what it's going to do is I'm going to be able to pick one Pokemon from each gen that I love the most, and that's going to help me dwindle it down all the way to Gen 9 or just past Gen 9 where that golden box is. That golden box is the final who is the ultimate of all time favorite Pokemon. And then of course we'll get to the stuff at the bottom at some point. But for right now, I have to pick out of everybody that we've picked so far. This is nuts. It's crazy. That Mew though. I know Mew is sick. It pains me not to pick Mew, and I love Mew. I feel like Mew deserves me. Honestly, anybody else that picks Mew, I'm there for you. I feel it. To me, I can't pick Mewtwo or Mew over Mewtwo because Mewtwo was always on my team. It was always accessible. I always saved the Master Ball for Mewtwo. I didn't even mess around. I used the Master Ball on Mewtwo more often than not. I think probably as a kid I tried taking it on normally and realized that I was not going to do that. Anyway, let's figure out what our favorite Gen 1 is. So I think by default I might be leaning towards Charizard. And the reason I say that is because Charizard made it twice. I know that was a rule I was trying to stick with. Charizard did slightly trump Blastoise. But let me really think about this. If I have to go through all three out of all these options, I'm gonna dwindle it down to at least 3. Missing, no. Just kidding. We're probably gonna go either Charizard, Gengar, or Mewtwo. I think those have to be my 3 favorites. I have Gengar tattooed. Gengar is amazing. It's the only ghost type in Gen 1. Gengar holds up even until today. It is still one of the best ghost type. But I really love Mewtwo, and I really, really love Charizard. Charizard was always my starter, more often than not. Carried me through the entire game, swept so many battles. This is really hard. For me, this is a hard choice between those 3. Again, I love all the Pokemon in this box, but I have to dwindle this down and only pick one. It's got to be either Charizard, Gengar, or Mewtwo. I think we've got to cross out Mewtwo if we're cross-eliminating, because Charizard's on here twice, so it's got the edge. Gengar is permanently on my arm.
A few moments later.
Part of me wants to lean Charizard, but again, I have the tattoo, so I'm like, fuck. Which one do I go? Yeah, Charizard, and also I can't pick both. I can't pick both of these. Shit, it might be Gengar. It's Gengar. I just gotta pull the trigger. I gotta make it something. That's why I got this tracker, right? That's why it's here. I gotta land on something. It's either Charizard or Gengar. I gotta go with it. It's Gengar. Dang. I learned something new about myself today. My favorite Gen 1 Pokemon is Gengar. For those of you that are doing this like along, or maybe you've already done it, who's your favorite Gen 1? Thank you guys for making it this far into the YouTube video. If you guys are excited to see me continue fill out this table, don't be afraid to join the Discord, because that's where I'm posting any of my stream schedules. Discord's always going to be in our video descriptions below in case you guys need a link to join. It's open if you guys want to join the community, but as always, thank you guys for making it this far into the video, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, my friends, adios!